Sky view and sunlight access are two principles that development applications need to respect. Sky view is a static consideration that does not change, and it can be yardsticked through such things as angular planes and setbacks. The sun is a much more elusive consideration to deal with. The summer shadows of an earlier version of the Minto Towers that was being considered. The area in purple represents the full path of the shadow during the day, and the black bar emanating from the towers is the actual shadow at 10 o'clock in the morning. Here again it's shown at the winter solstice, at the opposite end of the year, and we see a very different footprint, and again we can see the 10 o'clock position of that shadow. Finally, we see the equinox, the midpoint of the year, and because we're close to the 45th parallel, it is fairly straight left or the west, and in the afternoon it projects off to the east. And again shown here, we see it at 10 o'clock as a fairly short shadow because the sun has some altitude at that time. Now if we look at this more locally at the intersection of Duplex and Orchard View Boulevard, and we see a man on the street. Now the way I like to work with shadows is to build contouring before development is actually conceived, so that we're not dealing with something that has become crystalline and then assessing its shadow when there's really very little opportunity to do any intelligent adaptation of the proposal. To start with here, I'm looking at 10 o'clock, and a 20-story building, as we can see in the cross section, produces a shadow of a certain length, and we know the angle of that shadow. And with that, along the edge of the residential neighborhood to the west and to the north, we can see the foot of this shadow, and we see to the right of that the top, where a 20-foot height limit is established. All of this can be built into a protractor that can be slid over the drawing and enable us to establish these contours. And here we see that template in place and the 10 o'clock position. Therefore, when we introduce a tower, we can likewise move this protractor over and establish where the shadow footprint will be. What we notice here is that the shadow of the neon extends beyond the edge of the residential neighborhood. Now what's important to realize here is this is an edge condition, the equinox. Anything towards summertime is presumed better, and anything is presumed towards the winter solstice is not part of any assessment or calculation in this test. But this test, the purpose of it is to, in a sense, lock down into some rational form the opportunity to discuss shadow impacts. What we do know is that in the day in the fall after the equinox, this shadow will be longer and extend further into the residential neighborhood. We can also lay out the footprint of the shadows for other buildings, and in this case we're showing in blue here the shadow from the apartment building on the southeast corner of Duplex and Orchard View Boulevard. Likewise, we can look at the towers as they're proposed to be extended, RioCan development, and we note here that its shadow actually casts onto the lands where the neon is going to be. So that we end up with a composite shadow in the end that is comprised of the future tower height of the RioCan project and the neon. Likewise, we can aggregate all the shadows together to create a full composite. Ultimately, in the end, we have to appreciate the fact that these are a diagram test utilizing the equinox. And as much as one might say that the towers of RioCan already create a shadow which then the neon adds on to, should be A couple of things need to be appreciated. One, the neon projects this shadow deeper into the neighborhood on the equinox, and likewise, as we shift in time, 20 minutes before or 20 minutes after this time, unique alignment of these towers starts to disperse, and the neon tower takes on a much more significant impact.